Hello and welcome to The Book is Better, where we're fixing today's movies one book at a time. Well, after suffering through a subpar romance story, I think I've earned myself a little treat. So today I'm going to be watching a movie made by my favorite author. You may have noticed some of his work around my set. Care to guess who it is? I didn't even pant at that. How did you find? No, it's Michael Crichton! John Michael Crichton, or as many of you know him, the guy who wrote Jurassic Park, was as creative as he was hardworking. Not only did he create tense, action-filled stories that come from and go to anywhere, but he's also able to educate somewhat. For example, most people didn't even know what DNA was before Jurassic Park, and now it's pretty common knowledge. Not only was he an accomplished novelist and screenwriter, but he also worked as a director and even a doctor, having graduated from Harvard Medical School. He typically wrote techno-thriller novels, researching different and emerging technologies and bringing them to light with shocking results. Ideas like cloning, nanotechnology, genetic patenting, and time travel were all just toys for Crichton as he masterfully weaved a story together. Some people have accused him of being a Luddite, since he seems to write so many stories warning of the dangers of technology. I'm of the belief that he wasn't a Luddite, and actually enjoyed seeing new technologies develop, but understood the risks of not being careful with them. His research was thorough, though he did take a few liberties here and there just for the sake of having a fun story. However, those liberties are backed up well enough that it's very, very easy to look past them, especially thanks to the suspension of disbelief. As his popularity rose, so did the number of movies based on his books. Jurassic Park was such a hit that his works were being adapted left and right. Soon Congo was adapted, and The Lost World, and Sphere. As the movies piled on, the quality dragged. People were in such a rush to follow up on the success of Jurassic Park that they forgot to make the movies good. They didn't understand the magic that Crichton used. Sadly, Michael Crichton was taken from us far too early on November 4th, 2008 at the age of 66. As such, I've decided to make November Michael Crichton Month, because a small-time internet reviewer totally has the power to do that. And to start, we're going to check out a particular favorite of mine, a story about traveling back to the 14th century, yet without the use of time travel. This is Timeline. Now, if you're familiar with Crichton's work, you know he starts his books off with complex science and several scenes quickly introducing the situation and the characters. It works well and can be easily adapted to film, like how Jurassic Park did it. But you have to start off slow and introduce the science bit by bit. You show a little science, then you show a little bit more character. Then you show a little science, then you show a bit more character. When you do it though, it helps if you don't unload everything all at once.
He's gone.
I don't know what to tell you. It's over 100 degrees out there. This guy grabs me with his hands. It's ice cold.
Apart from his obvious external wounds, everything is out of alignment. Even his veins are out of alignment.
I didn't edit any of that. That's really how the movie introduces the idea of a transcription error.
What the hell are transcription errors?
Mistakes in the DNA reconstruction process. It's like faxing a fax.
Distortions. Mistakes. Only the distortions are in the letters.
It's body parts.
We get dropped off in France at an archaeological dig site, where Professor Johnston is teaching a group of college students. After giving a history lesson to foreshadow the second and third acts of the movie, we see the relationship between Chris and Professor Johnston has changed from teacher and student to father and son. Now normally this wouldn't bother me so much, except there is a bit of a miscast.
Yeah, your mother wanted to change the scenery.
How does this always end up happening to me?
Because I am older and very much wiser than you. Have a beer. Cool you down.
Their accents couldn't be more different. You have Billy Connolly, who has one of the most Scottish voices I can think of, and Paul Walker, who I can only reasonably dub with my surfer voice.
So, do you think you're gonna follow in your father's footsteps?
Like, no. I know that's not a huge problem, but if something takes you out of the moment, then the movie has failed to properly immerse the viewer, which means it's failed as a story. And it only gets worse later. We get a scene introducing Gerard Butler sporting another ridiculous accent as he plays Andre Merrick.
What are you talking about? I mean, what's the future, but just more of the same, you know? More bloody gadgets, more machines like that thing you rode up on.
This guy is what happens when you let your kids grow up in a Renaissance fair. I would know.
You know, people then, they cared about each other. The men had honor, you know?
Oh, really?
I've got a family.
So did I! No! 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 No!
Professor Johnston heads off to a meeting with their financiers in America, which makes it all the more unusual when his glasses show up in a recently excavated dig site. And if that isn't strange enough, they also find a note from the professor that dates back to the 1300s. Concerned, The team of students fly off to the headquarters of ITC, the company financing the digs. In the book, Doniger, the CEO of ITC, was as brilliant as he was ambitious, being compared to other revolutionaries like Bill Gates and Steve Jobs, and going as far as to create quantum computing and quantum teleportation just because he wanted to. You wouldn't know that from the name of his company, though. And this is one of the big scenes that tells me the screenwriters had no idea how to write nearly as well as Crichton. The movie strips down the science to a bland, basic understanding of what's actually going on. Jurassic Park works so well because you had the complex idea of cloning dinosaurs back to life, yet the movie laid it all out for you to understand. Here, the idea behind quantum teleportation gets dumbed down to a comparison to a fax machine, and the multiverse theory gets skipped entirely. Also, the book specifically said this was not time travel, and yet...
What you're saying is that you accidentally discovered time travel.
No, Mr. Stern, we accidentally discovered a wormhole. A wormhole that seems to be locked to a single time and place in the past.
Now, some would argue that since you're using a wormhole, it's not the same as time travel. But I would ask, how often have shows like Star Trek or Futurama use wormholes in order to travel through time? Besides, it's still inferior to the quantum mechanics of the book. I know I'm repeating myself, but I have to since the movie just doesn't get it. This story isn't about time travel. I know that sounds weird since they go back to the 14th century, but hear me out. The movie wants you to believe that there's a wormhole that opened up to 14th century France. My guess is the director, the producer, the writers, whatever, couldn't wrap their heads around the actual events in the book. That is to say, they couldn't understand the multiverse theory. A favorite in comics, the multiverse theory roughly says that every time we make a decision, we in fact create an entirely different world.
With every choice we make, we literally create a world. History branches in two, creating one Earth, where we made the choice, and a second, where we didn't. That's the secret of the universe, you know.
As Crichton explains, these universes line up closely together, indirectly influencing parts of each other. In the book, a neighboring universe was linked to our 14th century, as well as a few other choice points in history. Meaning you could carve a message on a castle wall in France and have it show up in present time for us. And through the use of quantum teleportation, people are able to teleport themselves back and forth between select times between the two universes. It sounds complicated, and in all truth it is, but from a narrative standpoint it's easy enough to understand. But enough about that, let's get back to the movie. So the team suits up in medieval clothing and head to the... time machine. And we get a sequence that looks like someone tossed a leaf blower into a hall of mirrors. Apparently there was no CGI used in this movie. Commendable, yet I think we'd be okay with a little special effects during a teleporting scene. They make it to 14th century France, but things go tits up within seconds.
After him.
Yes, my lord.
Get the others. Find out who they are. Yes, sir, Captain.
Wait, the knights want to kill them, then find out who they are? But I thought...
People then, they cared about each other. The men had honor, you know.
Get the others. Find out who they are.
And afterwards, we can have tea while we whip a group of starving orphans. We're the bad guys, by the way. But one of the Marines they take on as a bodyguard takes a few arrows to the chest and decides to fight back. With a grenade. Look, I know they use a grenade in the book, but there are so many better weapons you could use for this. I mean, a grenade? What if you toss it and missed? Or it rolled down a hill? Or you get teleported back to the present and you accidentally blow up the teleportation machine. Besides, wouldn't a gun be much easier to use? I'm single-handedly winning the 100 Years' War! But as they nearly get away, Merrick is forced to act, running an English knight through with a sword. Great. They've been there 5 minutes and Gerard Butler's already killed somebody. Oh, but remember...
People then, they cared about each other.
But it could be worse. If they brought Russell Crowe back, half of France would be on fire by now.